The wire clears at 2:47 on a Thursday afternoon, and you are standing in your kitchen reading the number 3 times because your brain will not process it as real. $2.9 billion. You set the phone down. You wash a glass that was already clean. The feeling you have been running toward your entire adult life does not show up. You have been here before, just never with this many zeros. And somehow, the zeros do not change the feeling. They just change the number. This is not the story you were told about what this moment looks like. The story you were told had a different ending. It had a room full of people, a bottle of something expensive, a version of yourself finally exhaling after years of holding your breath. It did not have a clean glass and a drying rack and a parking lot across the street where a man is struggling with a grocery bag that is too full, completely unaware that your entire life just changed in the kitchen behind him. The world does not reorganize itself around your wire transfer. That is the first thing nobody tells you. This starts 35 years before that Thursday, in a house where money was never discussed and never wasted, and always, quietly, not quite enough. Your father drove a refrigerated delivery truck for a grocery chain. He left at 4:30 in the morning and came home smelling like cold air and diesel, and never complained, because complaining cost something he could not afford. Your mother worked a front desk job carefully kept below the hours threshold that would require the practice to offer her benefits. She knew. She never said anything. Looking directly at a thing means deciding what to do about it, and no version of that conversation ended well on a Tuesday night with 2 kids and a mortgage that was 3 years underwater. So the house ran on a system. Rent paid the day it was due, not before, because the 11 days it sat in checking earned something. Not much, but something. The credit card paid to 0 every month, not because your parents understood credit utilization ratios, but because debt was the kind of thing that grows when you are not watching. Groceries on Wednesdays, 2 days before the weekly circular reset, because your mother knew which markdowns hit on which days at which stores. This was a kind of expertise for which nobody gives you a credential. You were 11 years old and absorbing all of it. You wore the same 4 shirts on a weekly rotation and got good at spacing them out. You did not go to Jordan's birthday party in 6th grade because it was at one of those places where you pay per activity, and your parents gave you $20 and you did the math in the car, and the math said no before your parents did. The school trip to Washington cost $340. You never asked. What you learned in that house was not poverty exactly. It was the specific weight of a life lived just below the line where things get easier. Not hungry, not in crisis, just permanently, quietly not quite enough. A low hum underneath everything that you stopped hearing as a sound eventually. It just became the air. You were 16 when your father got passed over for a route supervisor position he had been informally doing for 8 months. The man they hired had a cousin in regional management. Your father found out on a Friday, came home, ate dinner, watched television, went to bed. He did not raise his voice. He did not throw anything. He absorbed it with the quiet resignation of a man who had learned a long time ago that the system had its own logic, and that logic was never written with him in mind. You sat across from him at a table with a wobbly leg propped up by a folded piece of cardboard, and something cracked open in you that was colder than anger and more useful than anger. Because in that moment, you understood something nobody handed you and nobody taught you. The ceiling your family kept running into was not made of talent or effort. It was made of access, of knowing which doors existed before you needed to walk through them. And quietly, without telling anyone, you decided you were going to learn where the doors were. That decision did not feel like a turning point. It felt like a thought you had after dinner on a Friday. But it was the whole thing. You left at 18 on a Pell Grant and 2 subsidized loans. You picked the cheapest meal plan. You calculated once what buying coffee every morning would cost compounded over 4 years and never bought coffee on campus again. Your roommate thought you were cheap. You did not correct him because the math would have taken longer to explain than it was worth. You graduated with a logistics degree and $34,000 in debt and took the first job that offered health insurance. You noticed something at work in that first year that nobody above you seemed to be paying attention to. A gap between what the freight routing software did and what it could do if someone built it correctly. You stayed up until 1 a.m. reading about it. You ran the numbers for months before you believed them. Then you left at 24 to build it.
By year 3, you had 4 clients, 1 employee, and a product that worked better than anything else in a niche nobody else thought was worth building for. You raised $800,000 in seed funding. The wire hit your business account and you stared at it. And then went back to work, because the number did not feel real, and the work did. At 28, a serious relationship ended. She was not wrong about why. You were there, but you were not present. She named it clearly, and you did not have a good argument, because she was right. You took 2 days. Then you went back to work, because you did not know what else to do with the feeling, and the Series A deck was due Friday. Year 6, payroll was due on a Thursday, and the bridge funding had not cleared. You spent 72 hours on the phone and on email, and sitting very still in a conference room at 11 at night, waiting for a callback that might not come. It came at 12:47 in the morning. You did not celebrate. You sent the payroll file and sat in the dark for a while, and then drove home. At 32, the doubt hit differently than it did at 24. At 24, the doubt was loud, almost energizing. At 32, it was quiet. It sat with you at breakfast. It did not argue. It just asked very calmly whether the people who stayed in the regular jobs were actually smarter than you, whether the mortgage and the weekends and the ordinary comfort your old roommate had was the more honest answer to a question you had never really articulated. You did not have a good response. You just kept going, because stopping would mean the decade meant nothing, and you were not ready to believe that yet. The acquisition conversation started in September. A logistics conglomerate had been watching your growth numbers for 18 months. Their first email was written to sound casual, like it was not what it was. You forwarded it to your attorney and waited 3 days before responding. Not as a tactic, because you had learned that the first person to show urgency in a negotiation is the first person to lose ground in one. 5 months. 3 rounds of due diligence. 2 trips to Atlanta. 1 moment in a conference room on the 41st floor where their lead counsel raised something that almost collapsed the entire deal. You sat very still and said very little, and let your attorney handle it, which is what you were paying her for. You had stopped performing composure by then. You had actually developed it. There is a difference. The final number was 2.9 billion. And that brings you back to the kitchen. The clean glass, the drying rack, the man with the grocery bags across the street. You expected something. Not confetti, not a cinematic exhale, but something. Some signal that the distance you traveled was real, that the relationship you did not save, and the funerals you almost missed, and the 72 hours in a conference room in year 6, and the rice in the parking garage in July, actually added up to something the world would acknowledge. In some quiet way. The world does not acknowledge it. You rinse the glass, you put it in the rack, you walk back to your desk and join the 3 o'clock call 2 minutes early and say good afternoon and open your laptop and do the work. Because that is what you know how to do. And for a long time, it is the only thing that still feels like solid ground. Thanksgiving comes. Your sister picks you up in her 2014 Kia with the cracked rear bumper she has been meaning to fix for 8 months. The heat does not work on the passenger side. She plays a playlist from 2009 and sings along without embarrassment. You watch her and feel something you do not have a clean word for. Not pity, not nostalgia. Something that lives in the space between loving a person completely and knowing that your daily reality and hers now exist on different planets that happen to share a table. The table is the same table, slightly uneven. Someone has put a folded piece of cardboard under the short leg, the same solution your family used 30 years ago. When you notice it, you have to look away for a second.
Your mother checks the price on a container of whipping cream at the grocery store on Wednesday morning. Puts it back. Checks it again. Puts it in the cart. Grocery prices are running nearly 22% higher than they were 5 years ago. You know this as a data point. She knows it differently. You could write a check before dinner that would end every financial concern she will ever have for the rest of her life. You know the number. You have almost said it out loud 3 times and stopped each time. Because money given wrong does not just help. It restructures a relationship in ways that cannot be undone. It changes what she is to you and what you are to her. And you are terrified of losing the version of her that existed before the wire cleared. So you pay for the groceries. Just the groceries. She says you did not have to do that. You say it is nothing. You both know it is not nothing, and neither of you says anything else. Your 3 closest friends from your 20s are deep in a different life. Marcus coaches high school basketball and has a daughter in 2nd grade and a weekend that actually belongs to him. Priya just made partner and bought a house and is thinking about a 2nd kid. Devin is between jobs and stressed in the way you used to be stressed, before the stress became something else. They are not going anywhere. Neither are you. But the space between where you all started and where you each landed has become wide enough that a dinner conversation sometimes feels like a phone call with bad reception. You can hear each other. You are just not quite connecting. You buy a house in Nashville in January. Not a compound, just a house with a porch and a yard, and enough distance from the calendar and the wealth management team that you think you can finally breathe at a normal rate. You take morning walks. You sleep 8 hours for the first time in what feels like a decade. You cook breakfast on Tuesdays. You sit on the porch and watch the light change and think, this is it. This is what the other side feels like. This is the part where it gets quiet.
The quiet lasts about 6 weeks. Not because something dramatic happens. Nothing dramatic happens. You just notice one morning over coffee that your mind is already running, already calculating, already scanning for the gap, the inefficiency, the thing nobody else is paying attention to yet. You have not opened a laptop. You are just sitting there, and the engine is running anyway. Idling at a frequency you have had for so long, you stopped hearing it as a sound. The same way you stopped hearing the low hum in your childhood house. You realize the engine was never about the money. The money was the metric, the proof the engine was working. The engine itself was built much earlier. At a wobbly table on a Friday night, watching your father absorb a loss the system handed him like it was simply the way things were. The engine was built from that. From the specific, cold clarity of a 16-year-old who decided quietly that he was going to learn where the doors were. You solved the financial problem completely and permanently, at a scale your 16-year-old self could not have imagined. But the engine that drove you there was never running on the financial problem. It was running on something older, something that does not check account balances, something that did not know the wire cleared. What is different now is this. You are not building for survival anymore. You are building for the starting line. Because somewhere across the last decade, you crossed the line your family had been standing in front of for 3 generations. And crossing it means something specific.
It means your sister's daughter, who is 7 years old and has your same eyes and has no idea what a Pell Grant is, starts somewhere different. Not easier necessarily, higher. The ceiling you kept running into becomes the floor she never knows was there. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing.
And yet you are 35 years old and sitting on a porch in Nashville, and the engine is running, and you do not know how to turn it off. You are not sure you are supposed to. The wound that drove you here is the same wound that will not let you rest. And you can hold both of those things now. The gratitude and the exhaustion. The legacy and the loneliness. The open sky you built for the next generation and the ceiling you still feel above your own head on certain mornings, even though it is not there anymore. The financial problem is solved. You just do not know yet what to do with the person who solved it. You will not remember the exact moment the wire cleared. That surprises you later when you think about it. You will remember the man loading groceries into the Subaru, the clean glass in the drying rack, the folded cardboard under the table leg at Thanksgiving. The small things carried the weight. They always did.
What you understand now, sitting on this porch on a Tuesday morning with nowhere to be and nothing urgent, is that the engine was never a problem to fix. It was the price of the ticket. You paid it across a decade in hours and relationships and ordinary Thursdays nobody will ever see or name. Your kids will not pay that price. That was the point. But the engine is still running, still scanning, still looking for the next door. You gave them the open sky. You just do not know yet who you are without the ceiling.